Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose. You are watching my podcast show presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center or IRCC. Today's topic is tension in the ocean. We will discuss the strategic importance of India's second naval base in Lakshadweep, very close to the Maldives, and the India-China contest in the region. I have with me retired Brigadier Niladri Shankar Mukherjee and Professor Sreeradha Datta of Jindal School of International Affairs of OP Jindal Global University. Professor Datta is a prominent name in neighborhood studies. She has authored many books. Brigadier Mukherjee has been a highly decorated officer and is the Secretary and Executive Director of Kolkata-based think tank K, which is known for its contribution in strategic and issues. Before we start this discussion, here are some quick pointers for viewers to understand, to get a background. Maldives is an island nation in the Indian Ocean, not very far from Indian coastline. Global east-west shipping lanes pass through the Maldives. There are some 1,000-odd Maldives, very tiny Maldives islands, and the shipping line pass through them. It receives India's budgetary grant. The grants were doubled to nearly $100 million, 800 crore in Indian currency in 2024 budget. Maldives fell for the Chinese money bag and borrowed beyond its means during the presidency of Abdullah Yamin Abdul Gayoom during 2013 and 18. In return, China wanted strategic control over the country. 42% of Maldives' $3 billion foreign debt is attributed to China. India-Maldives political balance was restored after a new government came in 2018. In 2000, India also offered external assistance of roughly $1.4 billion. The new government that is in place of Mohammad Mujju is from Gayoom's party. He has taken over in November 2023 on anti-India and pro-China call. Mujju's first task was asking India to withdraw its small Air Force contingent in Maldives. And this was followed by, things started happening very quickly. So November, he came in and asked India to move out. And by January, there was an incident where at least 3 of his ministers openly mocked Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on something very unrelated to them. In March, on March 6, to be precise, Maldives signed 2 military pacts with China. And on the same day, India announced opening of the second naval base in Lakshadweep at Minicoy Island, that is only 100 kilometers from Maldives. A new airport is also ordered at Minicoy. So with this background, I'm moving to Brigadier Mukherjee. Sir, in the final analysis, it seems to be a full-scale India-China contest over the control of Indian Ocean and the key shipping route. The question is, how strategic is Indian response? Do you expect this contest to hot up? Is India fully prepared? Over to you, sir.
Before I commence, let me take just 1 minute to give you a little background as to why this area has suddenly become so important to not only India, but to many navies of the world. Firstly, let's go back and revisit the Sri Lanka LTTE period. At that point of time, somehow among strategic circles in India, it was felt that the entire episode of the IPKF era was not handled properly by India. At that period, Sri Lanka also looked at its options, and China, the opportunist that it is, moved into that area with all the false, pleadings that they did to the Sri Lankans with giving them aid and other issues. And at the moment, they have grabbed this 99-year lease with one of the major ports in Sri Lanka, which is uh, with them at the moment. Maldives, which had always been a good friend of India, and we had a little bit of uh, naval station there, should I say. At that point of time, with this present regime having come in, and you gave a background as to why, at this moment, a very highly radicalized Maldives somehow has gone the Chinese way also. With the result that having the last uh, portion of whatever remnants of the Indian armed forces which were there in the guise of running these two Hector utility vehicles which are there, and having moved out, now there is a requirement of, and they have allowed the Chinese to come in and visit the area. Therefore, the Indian Navy and the Indian government has become very sensitive to this area. Reason being, 90% of the trade from the Gulf of Aden moving towards exiting and coming in into the Arabian Sea is through this area. There have been instances of piracy in this area. There have been instances of very many of this projection of power by the different navies of the world into this area. And the Chinese have been expanding from the Pacific towards this area in should I say, exponential way. And India has always been very sensitive to this.
The question is very precise. Is that is it just opening a naval base, or we are hearing many sort of stories, Andaman becoming a bigger base or this or that. So what is, we all knew about this Chinese strategy of coming into Sri Lanka and then Maldives and to the Africa, etc., etc. But what is now the Indian response and where it is going to lead to?
Andaman and Nicobar was already becoming a very good naval station, and now it is likely to become a theatre command, part of the Southern Theatre Command of the Indian Armed Forces. And therefore, it is a huge projection into that area, because from the Malacca Straits, everybody coming in into that area, we can keep a very good eye on every shipping that comes in. And remember that the submarines which come in into this area, they have to surface at the Malacca Straits. The oceanography is such that once they have to surface, they're under observation of the Indian naval ships. And therefore, after that, it is very easy to track these submarines, which are then moving into this particular Indian Ocean region. Similarly, after the Maldives have been, we have pulled out our troops from there, Minicoy, which is just 58 kilometers from that last establishment that we had, and the Jatayu naval station that we have established, got a real pep up when we put in 6 Seahawks that we have recently acquired out of the Romeo Squadron, which is likely to be based at Kochi, for which 24 of these Seahawks that we have already put down $2.5 billion in order to get them. Now, these are highly fourth-generation Hectors with anti-submarine warfare capability, and they can be deployed on any kind of naval assets, whether it is a frigate or a cruiser or a, should I say, a destroyer, and it is multi-role. And therefore, 6 of them have already been deployed. There is now talk about having an airfield there at Minicoy, and plus other assets, which will strengthen not only our naval presence there in that area, but will be a counter to anything that the Chinese might try of coming closer to the coastline of India. Added to this, you must appreciate that these, one of the facts, if I might just complete, one of the facts is that these islands allow us to have value additions of our economic zone. This exclusive economic zone, immense amount of ocean surface areas come into our value-added entire area specification of immense resources that we then can later on look at. And therefore, this is not only the second naval station that is looked at, but this entire area has now become very sensitive because of the way the Chinese Navy is expanding. China already, their shipping numbers have exceeded the American states, although there is talk that many of their assets are ghost ships and may not be having that much of a clout as they project. But remember that the hundreds and hundreds of fishing trawlers which the Chinese have, and which they always put to sea, have already modified themselves, although they are of civilian ownership, with communication set up, and they can be
I
fast moving trawlers
I think
deployed
I
to
will
the in a
have
war.
a second round of query to you as why India did not step up its defense for so long. The rest of the story was known that what China was creating and why did India couldn't do. I mean, why India didn't put up the base, this particular base, whether it was we had our problems, whatever. But before that, I would like to take Professor Datta. Uh, Maldives is clearly there is going to be a proxy war, and Maldives is in the middle of it. Okay. We saw similar situation in Sri Lanka. Uh, there was also another part to it that the smaller countries in the region, right from Nepal to Sri Lanka, Maldives, and of late Bangladesh, they always enjoyed pitching one against another and enjoying access to easy money. And in this context, they always saw India as an underdog. Now, the first question is this India is also not that same India, and Maldives is too small. So, do you think that they have to pay a price for this? If so, in what way? Or
The
can
way
they
I
bear it?
see it, the way I see South Asia, the way I see what China is doing, I've said this and we've discussed this earlier that everything that China does in South Asia has an India context. They don't do it because they just want to maximize their engagement or they have a clear idea of the dividends that would accrue, but also how it's going to, marginalize India, hurt India in that context. But again, as we said, we know that we often say this that India didn't, wake up at the right time. But the point is that the capacity is also involved here. I think we were discussing the naval capacity being, increased. We know about the fact after many years, naval budget has finally increased by a certain percentage, but it doesn't match the other budgetary issues. Of course, we are aware of that. At the same time, India is also concentrating on building ports across. We are aware of that. Andaman Nicobar and of course all of South Asia we are examining. But there are clear limitations to the capacity in that sense. But on the other hand, and the point you said about how the other countries are wanting to, I think, use the word balance. I mean, which country would not do that? But what I think, and this is coming to the point that you said about that's not the same India anymore, they also realize the advantages of going with India. So while they are going certainly with many aspects, because the kind of infrastructure development that China has been able to support, India simply can't. So I mean there is no competition there. We are aware of that. And if somebody wants infrastructure support, what would they do? They would go to China. But at the same time, the Sri Lankan experience, the Maldivian experience, right now there's all a huge hype about the Chinese and the support to that. But you recall in the previous government, India bailed them out also because they were not able to pay some of the credit
And in
towards
February, IMF had warned them of a
yeah.
debt
So
crisis building up.
and India's growing role as not only as a, as kind of a first responder, as we constantly talk about, but in terms of the economic strength that they have. And also because I think everybody understands that India does not have the kind of a aggressiveness or, it's benign in its kind of engagement. So nobody misunderstands that, but everybody wants to play its own hand, so which is quite clearly. But I'm totally convinced that no matter how difficult our relationship with Maldives is or with Sri Lanka, just because we gave them a certain 4.5, it doesn't mean that everything is hunky-dory. But it's again there's a change that's happening in Sri Lanka. I think even with elections coming, if you look at the the fact that we are talking to different players in Sri Lanka, which is never the case earlier. So in that sense, and of course, Bangladesh, we have challenges, but we again a very strong, robust infrastructure partnership is emerging. But the point is that China has been in the game far longer, far ahead. And the way they're able to engage, maybe intrude in certain political landscape, which you've never seen before, is something that India won't, I mean, I don't think does want to play it that way. And I don't think we even have the capacity to play it the way they do. So we have our, limitations within the region in the Indian Ocean, but at the same time, look at the way our military exercises are increasing. Clearly, Quad and all of the Malabar exercises, we are doing defense. I mean, last December, there was a security conclave with Sri Lanka. So things are being put in place. And I think everybody does understand the boundaries, which was something in South Asia, I don't think was clearly ever defined. But again, this is the first time I see India defining its boundaries, which
This
is a
is
very clear
exactly what
message.
I was expecting from from this discussion. That how significant is this move? India has, as you rightly said, we were taken as, they practically dictated terms on India. If we look at it very realistically, the big nation didn't really dictate terms on the right areas. We might have done so in very many issues, but in the right things, we haven't. We failed there. So, how significant is this move that they did it on 6th? Same day, we announced it on 6th. So, we were ready. We were moving along with a plan, right? And I
Absolutely.
want to know that what would be the consequence? A very tiny nation, very, very tiny nation. I mean, what would be the consequence of this? Now they have no other option but to depend only on China. Now, that might be possible to some extent, for one Pakistan, right? It's a far bigger place, a landmass. It is a drop in the ocean. How will it survive?
It will not, and I think right now, because I mean, elections just happened. It's
And how
too
will Quad
soon.
respond? Quad also respond to that?
Yes, but I also feel within this area, which is the extended Bay of Bengal area, this side of the Indian Ocean, I haven't seen this anyway, it's not written anywhere, but there's my impression is the other partners in Quad kind of leave it to India to handle it. I mean, a small example is of the Bangladesh election. We saw the noises that was made by US, and we've seen also how tempers kind of, everything, the voices toned down because they clearly felt that India is in control here. So let's not go somewhere which we can't deal with. So even in this Maldives or other, and I think it's again the Quad members are extremely capable of intervening or putting in more kind of I mean, being a a stronger role in this theater. But at the same time, I think they will hold back till they see that India wants others' intrusion or something. So what I see emerging here is with the Quad that there is a clear area of interference or clear area of authority happening. This is not to say that I don't expect that everything is compatible with India in all the Quad players. We know the differences, but also it's a very issue-based politics that's emerging, which is, I think, a very nuanced and an extremely clearly defined relationship. Earlier, it was always if you're with someone or if you're not without someone. It's not anymore like that. So that's, and also the new India is a different. It's playing it differently. Its confidence is amazing, and I think. Maldives, as you rightly said, it's too small, but right now they want to make the noises because again we've seen this is a new China again who's so aggressive, who's loudly saying that guys, this is what is expected out of you. So obviously, we've seen how Bangladesh protested in the Indian Ocean case. We've seen how Sri Lanka's put its foot down. They've now said that no naval base, no naval movement entry, all that has been, there's an embargo put on it, which wasn't the case before. So I am
But
kind of convinced.
Maldives will not be in a position to assert itself. No way.
Yes, but at the same time,
It will be taker of either side. It has to now take whatever India does and whatever China does.
I feel, I mean, come on, it's political constituency that they also have to pander to, but they will also slowly reach out to India, realize that it can't be just one particular player at the cost of another. So while China now plays clearly a dominant role, but they also know the limitations of playing with China. I don't think that's lost on anybody. He's, of course, he's a political person. So I would think that it's too soon to say that Maldives
He
is
is
going
a
to get
political
hurt because
person,
they're
but we have seen countries. I mean, best case example is Pakistan. How basic political compulsion can take them to a situation where they have practically rented out their army. So
that's another country, that's true. But of course, I think it's apple and oranges. I mean, and as you in initial space said, but so
I
you
will
had.
I will get back to you. I will get back to you, and I would like to discuss on this design emerging? What will be the future policy? As you have hit the point that that the countries will take some lesson somewhere and will realign their policies. It's not.
Nepal's also realized, late realization, but Nepal's also on board now. So